Whoa, lots of fantastic Nintendo Switch 2 news just came out. Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today, again, we have much to discuss surrounding Nintendo and the Switch 2. We have an exciting update for Nintendo Switch Online. We have a variety of details on different enhancements coming to different Switch 1 games on Switch 2. We have a really interesting report about a significant game coming to Switch 2, as well as a rumor about a beloved Nintendo IP that I find to be very interesting, and we have a variety of other things to discuss as well today, so there is much to get into. But before going forward, let me take this moment to point out, I am aiming to reach 50,000 subscribers by the time the Switch 2 launches on June 5th. So if you find yourself enjoying my content, your subscription would be appreciated. So the exciting game that is now available for Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack members is Killer Instinct Gold. And I gotta tell you, this game is peak. It is one of my favorite fighting games of all time. It is such a good, epic, wonderful game. If you have Switch Online with the expansion pack, I strongly recommend you check it out. However, I will also note it is rather difficult, so using that rewind feature when you press the triggers to go back a few moments, which is only accessible on the Switch 2 version of N64 Online, might be worthwhile to some people. Regardless, this is a very exciting addition to Switch Online. A lot of people have been freaking out about a whole bunch of new renders that have come out for all these different Mario Universe characters. As you see on Nintendo's own website, they have updated the renders for all these different Mario characters here that are playable in Mario Kart World. The one that stands out the most is, of course, Donkey Kong, because his design definitely is different from the past, but most of these characters here have some pretty substantial changes. Mario and Luigi, Bowser looks fantastic, Peach and Daisy as well. And actually, we can see a little bit more here. You can see Mario's render, Luigi, Princess Peach, Toad, Bowser, Yoshi, Daisy, Wario, Waluigi, Rosalina, Bowser Jr., Boo, Donkey Kong, and Diddy Kong, who is not here. But if you go all the way to the end, they show this new render for Diddy Kong. Now, yesterday we already talked about how there is this new render for Diddy Kong. They've updated Diddy Kong's design, but this is a nice higher resolution version of Diddy Kong here. There are some really nice changes. We've talked about some of these changes already. He has more of a organic looking natural form. Some people are calling him fat. I just think it's a more naturally proportioned body, but you can see that there's more detail with his toes and fingers and all. He has teeth now, more of a rounded face. You can see more of the smiling expression. I see a lot of people complain that the eyes are now two separate eyes, but I would have never noticed this actually if there weren't complaints. I don't think this should be a weird thing. Like, most characters don't have eyes connected. They have two normal eyes. This is kind of like the standard thing. I guess the idea is that they don't want it to go away from the initial design of Diddy Kong, but things are going to change and evolve here, and I don't think it looks bad in the slightest. I think it looks fantastic. Diddy Kong looks wonderful. Now, other people have noted that it doesn't look like the Nintendo logo is on Diddy Kong's hat anymore, and he has actually like a pin. It's an interesting change, but I don't think it really makes much of a difference, and what I find more interesting is simply that Nintendo clearly has a plan for Diddy Kong here. Diddy Kong's not a part of this cast that's in Mario Kart World, but yet Diddy Kong's the only new render that's being shown here that's not in Mario Kart World. So what does that mean? It might be further fueling the theories here that there may be some Diddy Kong something happening with Mario Kart World, perhaps also tying into some cross-promotion with Donkey Kong Bananza, a game that comes out a month later. Moving on, there is a very interesting forecast that has come from DFC Intelligence. Here it reads, meanwhile, the Switch 2, along with the growth of mobile PC game devices, is redefining the landscape of the video game industry. Nintendo can no longer be considered as playing in its own separate space. With the Switch 2, Nintendo is positioning itself as a central player in the broader console and PC gaming ecosystem. DFC forecasts that by the end of 2029, the Switch 2 will have sold over 100 million units, making it the leading console system by a wide margin. The next few years could see Nintendo for the first time becoming the primary partner for third-party game publishers. This dynamic evolution will shape the future of gaming. Now, perhaps that may sound like hyperbole, but there are some other things brought up in this article. They are forecasting that Nintendo may sell 16 million Switch 2s by the end of the fiscal year. Initially, they were estimating 15 million, but they've upped that a little bit, and they would have predicted 20, but it looks like Nintendo's being more conservative with what they're trying to do, and Nintendo has noted that from their investors meeting. Now, something else that's been brought up is that because Grand Theft Auto has been delayed to next year, that's going to be less people purchasing PlayStations and Xboxes to play that game, and it's going to be more people more likely being more focused on Nintendo Switch 2 in this year of 2025. And I think it's interesting that they are talking about how Switch 2 could become a bigger place for third-party games. It's something that I've been thinking for some time. With the increased power of the Switch 2, as well as when you consider diminishing returns, the fidelity and performance of games is going to be good enough for a wider range of people on Switch 2 in comparison to PlayStation and Xbox. And then when we also factor in the mouse controls, which will also help to bring in a lot of PC gamers, and then also the fact that Nintendo is continually improving their online services and they're now integrating game chat, which is more than just basic voice chat, Nintendo is caught up in a lot of ways, and they may find themselves appealing to an audience they didn't do as well in prior generations, including the Switch 1. So there is opportunity here for Switch 2 to become a very successful platform, maybe even more so than what a lot of people have been thinking. And we've already seen a variety of examples of this already, of different big third parties supporting Nintendo more so than they would have in the past. For example, Take-Two is apparently a big believer in Switch 2. Here, the Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick said some very interesting things regarding Switch 2. "We feel really good about it, Switch 2, but it always remains to be seen. We are offering more on launch support than ever before for a Nintendo platform. We've announced 4 titles for Switch 2, it remains to be seen how it does, but I am a big believer. Historically, Nintendo has done a better job and more supportive job with first-party titles, but I think they're aiming to change that. And we basically have risen to the challenge and opportunity, and we'll see how it goes. We voted with our feet, Nintendo has asked us to be supportive, and we do believe we are doing that. Now we will see what happens." So it sounds like Take-Two has a lot of optimism in Switch 2, which is why they've announced a variety of games. They are investing in the console, but they're also taking a little bit of a wait-and-see approach here to see how these games sell, see how Switch 2 performs, and that will almost certainly impact how much Take-Two supports Switch 2 moving forward. However, it looks like the support from Take-Two will not stop there, because Take-Two is actually the parent company to Rockstar Games, and there is a rumor, according to both Game Reactor and Nintendo, that Rockstar is working on a Red Dead Redemption 2 version for Nintendo Switch 2, which would be huge. There's been a lot of conversation as of late if we will see something like Grand Theft Auto, for example, come to Switch 2, and there are some rumors of Grand Theft Auto 4 also coming to the console, but if we see something like Red Dead Redemption 2, I think that's going to bode extremely well. Now, with all this talk of a lot of different big AAA third-party games coming to the console, there's also been this other talking point of game keycard games where you have to download the entire game onto your console even though you have a cartridge. But Nintendo has gone on the record to say that they have no plans to use game keycards for first-party developed titles. So for those who are concerned about game keycards in their first-party Nintendo titles, well, I guess this would be fantastic news because, according to Nintendo, that is not happening. Something that is happening, though, is a variety of free updates to different Switch 1 games that you will be able to enjoy on Switch 2. Now, as you see here, I'm scrolling through this list. We already knew about these games getting enhancements for Switch 2, but now Nintendo has detailed what those enhancements are for these individual games. So as you see here for ARMS, it's going to have visual improvements, frame rate improvements, so even when you're playing with more players, the frame rate will still be smooth, I assume 60 frames per second. HDR support as well is always appreciated. Big Brain Academy will have access to game chat and also game share support, that's important. As will Captain Toad, will have game share support, but also visual improvements. Clubhouse Games will have game share support. Game Builder Garage will see visual improvements and support for the Switch 2 Joy-Con mouse controls. This might be kind of a big deal, I'm gonna say, because with Game Builder Garage, you want to use the touchscreen all the time because you're moving different things around. However, the mouse controls might make it easier to build and customize things while also in TV mode. Or perhaps it simply might be a more intuitive, precise way to do things in tabletop mode. So I think this is a low-key, pretty big deal right here. Mario Bros. U Deluxe will have visual improvements, as will Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, as well as frame rate improvements. Now, here are a few screenshots that have come out for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. The game doesn't look dramatically better in my opinion, but it does look a little cleaner, and if this also means that the frame rate and bevy of glitches have been smoothed out, then that is certainly a nice thing. Will I be going back to Scarlet and Violet? I'm not so sure. Maybe I'll go back at some point or another, but for those who haven't, there will be these improvements. Also, 3D World plus Bowser Fury is going to have a variety of improvements. It will also have game share support. They will have HDR, improved frame rate, and visual improvements. As will Mario Odyssey, The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, and Link's Awakening Remake. It's going to be fun to go back and check out how all these games look and run. I'm pretty sure I own all of these games. Pretty much. I'm missing one or two. But there's a lot here, so for those who are wondering what sorts of improvements we are going to see, now you know. Nintendo has announced a new feature for Nintendo Switch 2, where as you can see here from the footage, you can tell the console to search for controllers in your living space here. So if you are missing your Joy-Con, if it's tucked in between one of the cushions or pillows on the couch, you will hear it vibrate and making noise so you can find it. I really wish I had a feature like this for my TV remote. But this is a cool little neat thing that Switch 1 does not have, that Switch 2 does have. I wouldn't have expected it, but it's definitely nice to see. Something else we got a nice up-close look at is some of the box art for the Nintendo Switch 2 in Japan, it looks like here. And I just want to talk about how when we initially saw just like the initial sort of image file of the box art for these different Switch 2 games, there was a lot of criticisms and complaints on how it looked, the ratios and all that. But now looking at how they actually look in person, I think they look fantastic. Even the Switch 2 Edition one of Tears of the Kingdom, I don't think that extra text there takes too much away from the art. I actually think it looks really good. The way the art goes over the spine through the back seamlessly, and the red, it just stands out. I think they look beautiful, and I'm very excited to get my hands on some of these on June 5th. Moving on here to something that I appreciate, we got some new footage for Cyberpunk on Switch 2. What you're seeing here is just the footage in 1080p because I'm only uploading a 1080p 60fps video today. But I will have this full 4-minute clip of Cyberpunk footage on Switch 2 in the description below where you can check it out in 4K. But the game looks and runs fantastic. I'm very excited for this game on the console. I wasn't sure I was going to buy it at first, but the more and more I see, the more and more inclined I am to picking this one up. It seems like a very good quality title for the console. By the way, the entire game is on the cartridge, unlike most other third-party games. And to close out today's discussion, I want to touch on a rumor that has to do with a beloved Nintendo IP making some sort of comeback here. So this rumor is coming from Nash Weedle. But as Nash Weedle here says, me ha llegado un rumor interesante sobre un juego para Switch 2, pero no puedo validarlo para comentarlo como Leak Express. So basically what he's saying here is that he has heard about a rumor, but he doesn't want to give it as much credibility as when he calls something like Leak Express. So he's not calling this a leak, he's calling this a rumor. He hasn't fully verified the information yet, and he's asking if maybe he can still talk about it. He wanted people's opinions, and well, ultimately he decided to share this information, and this information is this rumor about Star Fox Zero on Switch 2. Star Fox Zero was on the Wii U, and basically he's talking about how there would be mouse controls, and this would sort of replace the motion controls we saw between the gamepad and the main screen, and you'd still be able to switch over to normal Joy-Con controls, the same way it works for other games like Metroid Prime 4, for example, where it's a seamless transition, and also that Star Fox Guard is coming as well. So, how do I feel about this? One, he's not calling this a leak express. He hasn't fully verified this information. He's just mentioning something that's come his way. So, already you probably should take this with a grain of salt, even if it was referred to as a leak express by Nash Weedle. But Nash Weedle's not even calling it a leak express. So, definitely, I don't take this as seriously as other things he has said, and even then, I still try to practice some level of caution. That said, I do think maybe they could make a better version of Star Fox Zero. I think there's a lot of things in Star Fox Zero that could have been done better. The visuals, the controls, the multiplayer modes, the overall story direction. To be honest with you, in hindsight, I have a lot of issues with Star Fox Zero. Now, I do like Star Fox Zero. It's a game I've gone back to over the years, but it's just a game that reminds me of how much more potential there is for Star Fox. So if Nintendo were to go back to Star Fox Zero to remaster it a bit, hopefully improve the visuals significantly, rework the controls, maybe add some other modes, maybe like an online multiplayer mode for example, then I think my tune on this game would change dramatically. But really, what I actually want is a new modern day Star Fox game, and I've been talking about this idea for some time. I do think it makes sense for Star Fox to come soon, and if something like this is in the works, then it could be a hint as to what Nintendo is working on here. We've seen a little bit of a correlation where Nintendo put out some sort of remaster, and then a few years later we see a brand new mainline release. Pikmin 3 Deluxe, Pikmin 4, Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, actually that was just a few months, now we're getting Donkey Kong Bananza, Skyward Sword HD, Tears of the Kingdom. So we've seen Nintendo do this quite a few times. If Star Fox Zero on Switch 2 is an appetizer for a brand new Star Fox a year or two later, then I'm definitely okay with this, but I would hope that they make some dramatic improvements to Star Fox Zero because it needs it. But to be clear, I do think Star Fox Zero at its core is still a good game. I don't want to let all my criticisms lead you astray here. But we'll see what happens. What do you all think? What do you make of all this latest Nintendo news and rumors? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.